all this cut material, the extra, 30, 40 minutes that they cut from the film just got tossed aside. So, like, there's no avenue for it to be released. Eventually, once everyone started loving this film and wanting to see a director's cut, and there is some stuff on the DVD, but it's all like VHS and they can't make it look great. The effects aren't finished. There is some more blood. There is some more gore. They found a bunch of this footage in a salt mine in Transylvania.
A salt mine? And why was it an salt mine in Transylvania?
And a lot of the footage they couldn't use. They've only been able to find some of the footage. A lot of it only exists as video, so they can't put it on anything else. They couldn't find the footage for various shots. I mean, it's just basically, the footage just isn't usable. And because at the time, Paramount was just like, we're not going to use it for anything. We're not going to use a director's cut. And this isn't, I don't know. I know Blade Runner, various films have had director's cuts, but I think the reaction to it was so strong, they just kind of cast it aside. It kind of bombed in theaters. So I think they said, much like Lawrence Fishburne said, F this ship, I think Paramount was like, F this movie. And when they tried to reassemble director's cuts, I mean, this stuff was in a Transylvanian salt mine. So there are no plans as of now to release a director's cut for this film.
Because they just literally don't have the footage.
Yeah. Now, on IMDb, if you look at the facts for it, they kind of break down what some of the footage is. So, I mean, that's pretty close, but I heard nothing out of it. I've read so many interviews for this movie about director's cuts, so the stuff on IMDb, I don't know if it's true. But there is on IMDb breaking down what the shots would be if the footage wasn't in a Transylvanian salt mine. So I wouldn't play. But you know what though? We talked about this, and I think people want it so bad, but I don't know. I think
too built up.
Yeah, I think
too built up.
I think the shots are exactly what this movie needed. I do. I think. I don't know. There could have been more gore, like, Jason Isaacs' guts hanging out. But these shots of hell, you said once, like, if you start pausing it, like, he actually shot these on the weekends, which is pretty interesting. But if you pause it and you kind of look at it, I don't know if it would hold up. And remember you and I have talked about how things become funny sometimes in horror, and you got to start, like, thinking about it. There's not enough here for you to, like, think about and go, hey, wait a second. Why is that guy playing tennis in the background? Or, yeah, like, there's just enough to build it up in your head. And I think
sometimes in the moment, our imagination is way more effective than whatever they could do with another 5 or 8 seconds.
Yeah. And I mean, people love this amount. So I don't know why you need more. I mean, that's why there are deleted scenes, and I don't know. I think the two guys agreed that they didn't have to make, their first cuts were too strong. So that these guys wish that the first cut that they took to audiences was maybe 15 minutes shorter and less, like, intense. Then they think they could have maybe cut it down by another 5 minutes. But since they started off so strong, there was a very strong reaction against it, and that was very reactive, and they had to cut a lot. So it was part of, like, a learning curve for them, and then it was just... So yeah, there's going to be no director's cut as of now. Unless, somehow they find a way to take Transylvania salt mine footage and make it perfect.
It's so weird. It's like when I first hear that, I just think that 2 episodes ago we did Bram Stoker. It's like some Transylvania salt mine. Some gypsies are like harvesting soil in it to transport Dracula to America, where he's buying up real estate.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that does it for our listener questions. Once again, thanks guys so much. We really appreciate your listener questions. They help drive our conversation quite a bit and open our eyes to maybe some weird stuff we wouldn't have thought up on our own.
Yeah, no, like we get some I wouldn't think to ask some of these questions, so I really appreciate y'all doing that.
I love the Hellraiser in space comment.
Yeah, that was great. Any final thoughts before we go to plugs?
I gotta tell you, so I've watched this movie 3 times in 2 weeks in preparation for this pod, not out of homework obligation, because normally I watch something once. It was just out of pleasure. I just wanted to I wanted to see it again. And I wanted to see it I should just watch it again. And every time I loved it. It was almost like when I do my annual watches. There's something about this movie. They really captured lightning in a bottle and captured some serious entertainment value for me. So awesome.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah, I was just because the Resident Evil movies, they're fun and all, but they can get old fast. So yeah, like this was his masterpiece.
Yeah, and I did a lot of research just because people have a lot of questions about this movie, so I went out of my way to make sure I could answer anything that they know, and it never felt like homework to me. It felt like I love filmmaking, and you know me, I love everything about filmmaking, and I think I learned a lot about how this movie was made, and I feel like I understand it now from a production standpoint, and I enjoy doing that. Sometimes researching movies are a slog, or commentaries aren't good, and I actually respect Anderson Moore and Jeremy for their commentary because I feel like they respected the people who were listening to it. And no, I had a fun time prepping for this.
That is such a great final thought also, because you mentioned it in the first place, and that's why I listened to it. A lot of times directors' commentaries are just there for what I would call fact geeking. You are watching just to know more about the movie. It's not necessarily so enjoyable of a process. This was a very, very, very entertaining commentary. It's very enjoyable. I haven't had so many experiences with commentaries that were so positive.
Yeah, and like there's some bad ones that just are insulting and like, oh, why are you even listening to this? Like this one wasn't that, so I dig it. Plugs?
Well, again, there were the guys who gave us our listener questions and some of our comments. We had player one at Retrobotic with a K. We had at Danny S. Warren, who gave us that quote that F to this ship.
Yeah.
At Alex Borkov, he's been participating so much with us the last couple months. The Fear Merchant, who has their own podcast, The Bazaar. And also Scarescapes, which is at D Carner with a K. Thank you guys for your listener questions. And then I want to thank, again, I think I did a couple weeks ago, but there's some people who just religiously seem to share our material and we don't ask for it. And they might not all even have their own websites or material for us to share back. But people like on Twitter, Leo Craven, there's an author, John F. Leonard. There's Mr. Horror. There's the Schlockernaut. They have a podcast. And there's Echoes of Horror, which is Grim Horror with 2 M's. All these people, they just religiously share our material. I'm assuming they like it.
Yeah.
And whenever I see it, I'm just so pleasantly surprised. So, I got to say thanks so much to them. And if you're listening, Johnny Numb from the Crash Palace, the Last Knock podcast, and from Loud Green Bird, you gave us a listener question weeks ago about Dwayne Johnson, which I've continued to delay, waiting for the right time, because we keep getting so many wonderful listener questions for the Happy Death Day podcast, the Bram Stoker podcast, coming into this one, the Event Horizon podcast, that it just feels out of place. We're going to use it, and I'm going to let you know when I use it. It's going to be spectacular. But thanks again to Johnny Numb. No H in that Johnny. Those are my plugs. Mark, maybe you have some plugs, and maybe you want to give a few highlights about things that we're planning on doing in the near future.
Yeah, next week we're going to be covering cinematic Seabeast. So if you have any...
Wait, what do you mean by sea beast?
So like the big monsters from Phantom Menace, the genetically modified sharks from Deep Blue Sea, the angry shark from Jaws 4, the merman. Like we're covering the big sea beast from Valerian, from Deep Rising. We got a lot of sea beasts, folks, and we're gonna do like a fun tournament style, kind of break them down. It's gonna be a podcast all things sea beast. So actually, if you have any questions about sea beast, please send them our way. I would love to get questions about them. Also, a big shout out to Robert Lamb from 7 Lamb Productions. He is crushing it right now. We're part of kind of under his banner. Really good guy. If you get a chance, go to Blog Talk Radio, type in 7 Lamb. Check out all of his stuff. Like great, great, great stuff. And thank you to everyone who listens. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And we appreciate you. So you good, John?
I'm good, guys. That's
All right.
a good night and a cheers from me.
This was fun. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, and John, I Eat Cement Levengood. This is Movies, Films, and Flicks. Have a great night.